Welcome. In this video we are going to implement the Sudoku class. So let us see what the question asks. First we have to implement the addIfValid method, which takes an array list of integers as input and returns true only if num is not in the array. In that case adds num to the array. And otherwise it returns false. So let us implement this. As you can see, I have copied over this template which was right here in the question, and now we shall proceed to implement this method. So whatever our result will come, we will store in this boolean variable. Let us first it be true, and then we are going to iterate over the array, and if that array contains that number already, only in that case we are going to switch result to being false, or otherwise we are just going to let it be true. So we are going to implement here the for each loop. For each integer I in the array, this integer I, this has been declared right here only, and this array is this variable of integers that this function gets. We are going to do this conditional: if I equals num, then result will become false. So here we can't do I equals num because I is an object. I is actually an integer wrapped around in an object, so it is an object, and that object integer class has a method called equals, using which we can compare an integer with an integer class object. So I equals num, if that is going to be true only if num is present in this array. So in that case result will be turned false, and in the end we are going to return this result only. But we have to do one more thing. Since if this number is not present in the array, then this for each loop will pass without this condition being ever triggered, and in that case we have to add that number back into the array. So if result, if result is going to true, then only this condition is going to be evaluated. Array dot add new integer num. So here we don't need to put these curly braces because it is just only a single statement that we are going to execute under the if condition, but it is always the best practice to do that. And if result is going to be true, result is only going to be true when we pass through the for each loop and never this conditional triggers, and it will never trigger only when that num is not going to be present in array. In that case we will add the integer. So here a new integer will be constructed. This number will be wrapped around an integer class and will become an integer object, and that will be added to this array, and we will return the result. So this is done. Now looking on to the next question, we have to implement the check call method. It will take an int as input and then test that particular column in the grid matrix. A column is valid if each of the cells have numbers from 1 to 9 and none of the numbers is repeated. And if you have guessed already, this add method will come very handy in this check call method. So check call method is right here. So here first we are going to construct an array list of integer. Name it array or whatever you want, and that will be equal to a new array list of integer. And now we have an array list called array, and again we will make the result equals true. And now for that particular column into the grid, we will iterate over each of the boxes in that column, and one by one add those the number present in the box to this array list called array, and on that array every time when we add, we are going to perform this method, this add if valid method. So if it is valid, then only it is going to be added, otherwise it will not be added. And now for int I is equal to 0, I is less than grid 0 dot length. This will tell us how big is our Sudoku. Actually it is only 9 blocks long, but it is a good practice. So I plus plus, and here we are going to check a condition. So if, now what we are going to check, we are going to add if valid. Now let us see what is asked: an array list and a num. We are going to provide it our array, and the num will be actually the grid, the ith block of the grid, and the col num which we were given here. And so let us see col num. Suppose we are given 2 as the col num. What is it is going to do? So 0, 1, 2, it is going to go over through this column number. So first it is going to access grid 0 2, then grid 1 2, then grid 2 2, like this: grid 0 2, grid 1 2, grid 2 2, grid 3 2, and so on. And when we will be calling this method, it is going to return either true or false. So if the number is added, it is going to return true, and if the number can't be added, it already exists, it will return false. So if this returns false, then only we want our this if condition to be evaluated. And what this if conditional will do is that it will turn the result of this method to be equal to false. And so we are nearly done. If like this row is going to be executed, so first in that array, in the check call array list, first this will be added, then this will be added, then this will be added, all through here. When we are going to be adding this 9, the add if valid method will not add it, and it will return false. And when it will return false, our check call method is also going to make result equals false, and when result equals false, at the end this result is going to be returned. Now let us implement the checkbox method. It will take 2 integers as input. The 2 integers will represent the topmost or leftmost cell address, and like for example, if we have to check this box, we are going to ask check box 0 6, 0 for the 0th row, and 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 column. And now we shall implement it, but first we are going to check whether the row and column provided to us are right or not. So we are going to perform an if condition, and if they are wrong, we are going to return the sentinel, that is -1. You can return even -10 also, but that doesn't matter. And when we have to think over this, when should our if condition execute? And this will happen if either row or the column are invalid. So either our rows are invalid or our columns are invalid. In that case, this sentinel is going to execute. Now when does our row is invalid? Our row is invalid when our row is not equal to 0, or the row is not equal to 3, or the row is not equal to 6. In that case, this if one of these will be true, then whole this will become true, and since again true or anything is going to be true, this whole if condition will execute and it will return -1. And we have to do the same for column also. Oops, spelling mistake. You have to do the same for columns also, except that they will be call. And yes, we have made our checkbox this if condition right. If if any of the number of these row F call are not 0, 3 or 6, it is going to return a -1. Now if we have passed all this, now we are going to check the box, and we will do that by again making a boolean variable. First we let it true, then we will iterate over some conditions, and whenever we find that the box is invalid, we are going to make the result false and finally return the result. Okay, so now it's time for a nested loop. So for int row is equal to the row we have given, it will go from this to row plus 3, that is, it will iterate a total of 3 times. We will do this r plus plus, and now again nesting it for the column, going to column all the time till r is less than col plus 3 and c plus plus. Now let us see. Suppose we have the row 0, so r is going to be 0, all iteration. Now r is 1, all iteration. R is 2, all iteration. R is 3. This condition will be invalidated and the loop stops. And for each row, it is going to do the same for columns also, and that's why it will work. And here also we will use that add if valid array. So if our condition evaluates ever to true, we are going to set the result to false. So add if valid, we are going to add to it we are going to add in the array. Oh, I forgot to declare the array. So array list of integers, we're going to call that array is equal to new array list of integer. This class is always a capital, and we have now an array list of integer, and in that array list we are going to add if valid our number which exists in the grid row column, and if that number already exists, while going over the toolbox, if that number already exists, it will return false, and when it will return false, we are going to not this, we are going to convert into true, and then this result will become false. And or otherwise, if this always keeps returning true and true, not true will always be false, and never this result or this statement is going to be executed. Oops, we have to return a positive number or negative number, not a boolean. See here, int. Sorry, my mistake. So if it's true, if it's result, we are going to return 1, else we are going to, actually we don't need this. If result would be false, that statement won't be existed, and we will be returning 0. And we are done for this function also. Now finally our constructor, we have to implement the constructor of the class. It will initialize the grid with answer user enters, and so we have to first take the user answer using that function get user answer, and then we have to, for its each row, column and boxes, initiate the check row, check call and the check boxes method, and if they all return true each and every time they are called, then only our grid is valid and we are going to finish calling those. Otherwise we will ask the user to enter another valid grid. So let's proceed. Here is our constructor, and we need a boolean is valid. Well, let us assume that the grid is not valid, and we will use a while loop so that until and unless a user enters a valid grid, we are going to do this all over and over again. So while not is valid, so initially this is false, not false is going to be true, so first time it is definitely going to run, and we are going to get user answers. And then we are going to make another variable, a temporary boolean variable, and we will initialize it true. Going further, now we are going to implement a for loop, and for each and every row and column we are going to call the check row and the check call methods and see if any time they return a false. So for int I is equal to 0 till I is less than 9, because our grid is a square, we can take 9 as the value, and I plus plus. So we are going to make an if condition, and if that happens to be true, we will make our the temporary variable false. So now for the condition, we are going to check the row, whatever it is at I, and we are also going to check the call, or check the ith column. And so if it happens that a number is repeated, either of these both is going to return a false, and we will convert it back to true. So if any of these return false, it would be converted to a true, and true or anything else is always true, and this will execute. So if our Sudoku is perfectly normal, it will return true, and this also true, not true false, or not true that is false, or false that is false, and this whole will never execute. But the other way around, if any of these returns a false, it would be converted to a true, and then this will execute, and our temp will have a value of false. And later we are going to make is valid equal to temp. If this is false, then our is valid is going to become again false, and false will be converted to true, and this whole loop will execute again. So now let us check the boxes also. So for int a is equal to 0 till a is less than 9 and a plus equals 3, so that it jumps boxes. And also it is going to be a nested loop again for int b is equal to 0 till b is less than 9, b plus equals 3. And in this we are going to check if, and if that if becomes true, again temp will be equal to false. Now what our condition is, that if the checkbox for this a and b returns is 0 equals 0, or even better, we should make it not equals to 1. This checkbox will not return 1 only when it is either a wrong row and column, which is, though it is not going to happen, or if the box is invalid, and then this will execute, temp will be equal to false, this whole loop will again start again. But if temp never gets the opportunity to become a false, then it is a really valid Sudoku grid, and in that case temp will remain true, is valid will become true, not true is false, while loop will break, and our constructor work is complete, and we are done with the Sudoku class also. Thank you.